Hello and welcome back to Let's All Laugh At, a football podcast that thrives at someone else's expense. I'm George and I'm joined by Dan, Johnny and Andrew. So full panel this time, first time in a while, and it is good to be back on my end, I must say.
Same here.
Yeah, same here. Oh yeah, well, Arsenal won again, so it's all good.
Yeah, all right. Well, in our absence, we will start with our two teams, I suppose, myself and Dan. So we'll go for Liverpool first. Sort of breaking your duct a little bit in the end, albeit against bottom of the league, but still 2-0 against Sheffield United, and yet another injury hit team. I think about 3 or so absences in the last 24 hours before the game, so certainly a good result to pull through on.
Yeah, and it's just we needed to win the game. You know, we were far from our best. It was better. Like between the boxes, it was okay. Like it has been for a while, to be honest with you. It's just, conceding goals, obviously, and not converting chances has been the issue, which isn't like us, generally speaking. But, yeah, we just needed to win the game because the results over the weekend really went for us, with a little bit of help from Arsenal, to be honest. So,
You're welcome.
winning was all that mattered, You're right, at the bottom of the league, they're a poor side, they're probably relegated. But I couldn't have cared less how it came. I'd have took another Origi off the bar in the derby just to win the match. I didn't care less. So, yeah, good result, good 3 points. But you're right. Like, obviously, one of the absentees was Alisson because of the tragic events with his father last week, which was awful. And we look like we got Jota back, and then he goes downhill the night before the game, and obviously Henderson has surgery in the week. It's been pretty, I'm fed up of saying it, but it's been pretty relentless, really. And there's some stats starting to come out now in terms of, days absent, and I think ours are like far and away the worst in the league. I think Crystal Palace is actually second to us, to be honest. But yeah,
we've had one of the worst injury records in the league for a while. That's what happens when you have combined the oldest squad in the league with subpar training facilities.
Yeah, ours is a little bit. People are saying it's down to like the intensity we played at, but some of the injuries we're looking at. Obviously, the Van Dijk one was a tackle. We're looking at freak sort of stuff that's gone on really. So I'm not sure I buy that. Maybe some of the muscle ones are, but I just said to Andrew off the call, like, obviously a lot of teams are dealing with injuries, but it's all relative. So our injuries hurt us because we were competing with Man City. That was the idea anyway. Whereas, other teams' injuries hurt them because they're competing with different teams. It's all a different way of looking at things. But, yeah, and, listen, we won the game and we needed to. So, hopefully, it kicks us back into gear.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need to worry about high intensity from us. Don't worry about that. Yeah. It's definitely not high intensity that's killing our injuries. But on Liverpool, I do want to play a little bit devil's advocate in regard to injuries because although you've had a good win, the last couple of weeks have not been as good at all, particularly the Everton game. I'm sure you'd love me to bring it up. Their first win at Anfield since, I think, 1999. So I was a whole 1 year old then. Yeah. Had to get that in there. But, yeah, I mean, there's an argument to be made, even though Everton have improved massively this season and are no slouches at all with the teams that they've beaten. There's an argument that even with Liverpool's injuries, their attack, particularly at home, is still good enough to win games. And they weren't scoring goals was the problem. They didn't get a single goal against Everton. So it's not even a case like they're losing games narrowly. There doesn't seem to be that much fight in the team. Like, surely you can't boil that just down to injuries.
I could definitely try. Do you know what? And a lot of people have said this now, like, the attack's the one that's not scoring goals, you haven't conceded that many, etc., which is right. But I think, narrow-minded is not fair, but it's quite a short-sighted way of looking at football. So everything we do, has changed because we've lost the entire spine of the team. Like, everything the midfield normally would do is probably a second slower than it should be, and Robertson, Trent Alexander-Arnold aren't bombing on as much because they haven't got Virgil van Dijk and Joe Gomez behind them, and they haven't got Fabinho and Henderson in midfield. Everything's changed. Like, the entire spine of the team that, let's face it, ran away with the Premier League last season has gone. Like, we played Sheffield United the other night with none of that. Like, I would say the spine would be the centre midfielders, the centre-halves and the goalkeeper, and not one of them was there on Sunday night. It's a completely new side. It's quite worrying, really. But listen, I mean, the strikers haven't been that good. That aside, Salah, has probably stood out at the restroom because his numbers are still ridiculous. But Firmino's been way off it in terms of scoring goals. Mane has really struggled, if I'm honest. So there is a point to be made there, but I think when you're talking more generally about Liverpool's play, it all boils down to the injuries for me as why we've suffered.
Yeah, I mean, as for you two, Johnny and Andrew, as more outsiders who have both faced Liverpool this season, and I mean Newcastle even came away with a point in the end. How have you? It's been quite a drop from last season. I mean, all the stuff that around that they're the worst defending champions, they're not even close, especially not statistically. But it has been chalk and cheese compared to a lot of what we saw last season. What do you Is there anything else you could put that down to, really?
I don't know. It's one of the things. I thought Alisson played on Sunday. That's what the commentator kept saying. Alisson kept saying it.
Oh God, how annoying was that?
I was like, what's he talking about? He's not even playing. Yeah, I think Liverpool. There's definitely been a drop, but then again, they were so good last season. Absolutely, they were unbelievable. Any team would find it difficult to keep that intensity up. Of course they would. Injuries haven't helped. Yeah, it's a really difficult one because they've still got some fantastic players in that team. Players that should still be beating teams like Burnley and Brighton at home. But it's a weird one why they've dropped off so much. I can't really explain it, but it's a big win on Sunday because if they'd lost that, it'd have been wow. But no, they're back kind of. I think Liverpool.
I mean, me personally, I think Liverpool have dropped off hugely, but I mean, they made the decision not to go and buy a proper centre-back in January, and they also made the decision to let Lovren go and not replace him last year. So, but, again, to knee damage for the whole season to your two best centre-backs is crazy. I agree with Dan. I think Mane's not been the same this year. Firmino was okay last year, but he's dropped off as well. So I think if you've missed the spine and you're maybe the players who were getting you out of games aren't quite playing to their level, then that's going to lead to the drop off. I still think they'll finish in the top four though, because I do have a feeling Leicester are going to choke again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean Leicester. We'll get on to them when we talk about the Leicester Arsenal game. But as for the opposing teams, Everton and Sheffield United, very much contrasting fortunes. With Everton, I mean, beat Southampton last night, obviously. I believe if they win their game in hand, they'll actually leapfrog West Ham into top 4 spot. I mean, imagine saying that this time last season. Everton and West Ham fighting out for top 4. But, I mean, it's no secret what's led them to where they are, both their manager and the money that they've spent, albeit they've spent it a lot smartly than in recent years. I mean, how far can Everton really go this season and in the next few years, I suppose?
I mean, I was impressed with them in the derby. I will make the point, like I always do, that it took 22 years for them to beat us at Anfield, and it was empty when they did. So that's probably a factor, but anyway, they were good that day. I don't think they were very good last night, against the Southampton side that's, on the bones of its arse. Let's be honest with us. But yeah. They play really quite poor football, don't they? I was going to say they play like football, but they don't. It's pragmatic is probably the way I describe it. It's what you'd expect from Carlo Ancelotti, if you're honest. They work really hard. They defend really well. And, they've got Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who bullies central defenders if you let him. And last night the goal comes from a long ball up to Calvert-Lewin. He wins 2 headers, and Richarlison finishes really well, to be fair. So it's not, it's not groundbreaking in terms of what they're doing. It's not Man City or Liverpool of last season. Let's have it right. But it's effective, isn't it? I don't think they'll get top 4. I think we seen in the early season they were flying, weren't they? And then they went on a really dismal run. There's time for that yet. So I don't think they'll finish in the top 4. I don't think West Ham will. I think their fixtures coming up are really tough. But, Europa League for Everton will be progression, wouldn't it? And I think they'll get better again next year because, let's be honest, Ancelotti's a very good manager. So, yeah, it's promising for them.
I think for me with Everton, some of the money they've spent is, they should really be pushing. They do get away with some, really bad signings, like Iwobi for 30 million. I mean...
Great signing. What are you talking
about? Balassi for 26 million.
Oh, yeah, that's a bad one.
Yeah, they had they have the sporting director. Some of, their defenders aren't cheap. Yerry Mina, 26 million. Michael Keane, 25 million. you know, they
Yeah,
have spent huge, like Pickford, 30 million. Like, they have spent huge amounts of money. They do go under the radar because they're seen as Everton, like, oh, you know, they're not really, but their spending probably is more than a lot of the teams in the top six. So they now got like a world class manager who's won the Champions League, you know. So they really should be. But for me, I think if they can strengthen their wide positions and supply to Richarlison and Calvert-Lewin, then yeah, they could definitely push for a top four down the line. I actually think West Ham are better than them at the moment. I think West Ham will I think West Ham would probably finish ahead of Everton.
Wow, very interesting. I mean, I've certainly been impressed with West Ham, as I've said before. And you know, we'll talk about them a bit later. But as for Sheffield United, I mean, they had a bit of that little resurgence, didn't they? You know, beating a couple of teams around them, beating Man United at Old Trafford, but it's just sort of gone a bit flat to them. I suppose the mountain looks, particularly with Fulham's form, the mountain just looks a bit unassailable for them.
Oh, absolutely, and as I said before we come on the podcast, that said to Dan, I don't understand against Liverpool. You know, that Ryan Brewster, you spend £24 million on him, and he's on the bench. I don't understand that. Surely, if you need a goal, you need to start winning games again. What way to, you know, try and kickstart your season by starting your new man against his old club and give him a go and not bring him on? I just find that very strange. I don't understand that. You're 2-0 down, I think it was at the time, and don't bring him on. Very strange. And bring on Billy Sharp. And Billy Sharp's a great goal scorer, don't get me wrong, but surely you want someone up and coming for that money. I'll just say it's a very strange decision for me.
Billy Sharp's good in the Championship. I think this whole Premier League, yeah, McBurney, McGoldrick, you know, they're not really Premier League quality.
McBurney.
That's why I don't like the Brewster. Like, why buy him in the first place? Let him go somewhere else. Like, just a stifling talent, really.
Yeah. McBurney, some of these touches the other night. God, touch of a donkey. Some of these touches. Jesus.
I think what I will say with Brewster, I think, you know, Sheffield United are in a good place to come straight back with him, providing they don't lose, you know, a couple of decent players. I think Lundstrom might go, and Sander Berge, who's out injured at the minute, he's a very good player, to be honest. But you know, if they keep hold of him, then they'll probably definitely come up, to be fair. But Brewster could score. We seen with Swansea last season, he scored a good amount of goals, so he could, you know, push them close, to be honest with you, next season. So there's that element, but it hasn't worked for him, has it, in the Premier League this season? Let's be honest. But I do think, like Andrew touched upon, it's a lot down to the style of football they play. Although they played good football last year, but because they're struggling so much, it all seems to have changed there for them, which is understandable, I suppose.
Yeah, and I do think we said it quite a few times on the pod that they're a certain team that are definitely missing the fans, because their fans are very loud, and I think they're definitely missing that at home.
I think John Fleck is their best player. I think he goes underrated, but yeah, most of them, they've got Championship players. I mean, even Chris Wilder was saying that in the week that, you know, we can only buy really Championship players, and this is why we're going to go back to the Championship. And yeah, but I mean, to be fair, they had a really good season last year, so you know, maybe they'll bounce back quite quickly.
Yeah, they've gotten so used to winning under him, under Wilder, that they'd be stupid to sack him. He deserves a chance. Maybe if things go badly in the Championship, then I can understand, but certainly, you know, he deserves a chance to get them back up. But yeah, I mean, moving on to Palace, it's quite a nice segue, because Dan was mentioning about Brewster and the style of play, because that's exactly how I felt about us and our strikers for ages now. I mean, the Fulham game, I mean, 0-0, not much more to say about that, other than, you know, we were lucky to get a point against third from bottom in the league. I mean, need I say more than that? But, I mean, Roy Hodgson talked about in his interview about, I mean, Mateta scores the first goal against Brighton and then gets dropped immediately after. And the reason was because, you know, he said he admired Benteke did more of the defensive work. And that says everything. That says everything you need to know about him. Like, it's been clear for a very long time that the strikers we have, the actual players, have not been the problem. They've been set up in a way that they've got no intent whatsoever of having them score goals. They're not there to score goals. They're there to, I don't even know what they're there to do. They're there to act as secondary centre backs. Like, the guy is literally, there's a reason why we look so toothless without Wilfried Zaha, is because he's the only person who's actually instructed to go and try and score a goal. I don't even know what the rest of them are doing, because we're totally out of ideas. But I mean, that's part of why I didn't come on the pod for so long, because I have absolutely nothing new to say about us. Even after the Brighton win, it was just classic smash and grab. Like, you know what I mean? That's how we've won all our games this season. I mean, in the second half at least. First half, we at least were able to thrash some teams like Leeds and West Brom. But since then, it's just, I don't know, we're not going to go down. We're far too clear of danger, and we always manage to pull out a result when we need it. We're just sort of limping over the line until the end of the season at this point. So I won't even bother talking about us. We'll move straight on to Fulham, who I thought were good. I mean, the problem with them is they're a bit like, well, they're not quite as bad as Brighton in that sense, because I think they've scored more goals, but they reminded me in that game in the sense that they create a lot of chances, but if you can't put them away, like, you know, you haven't got any hope of staying up really. And against us, we really were asking for it that game. So, I mean, they've got some tough games coming up for the next 3 games, so they're really going to have to take advantage of their chances, particularly against the teams around them.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I watched the game on Sunday. I was watching that and listening to the Arsenal game at the same time, and quite how it stayed 0-0. I don't know. Gaeta made some unbelievable saves. And I mean, Fulham, they've dropped, if they'd have beaten Palace and won the last game, they'd probably be out the relegation battle now. But yeah, I like Fulham. I think they're a decent side. I think I'm a big fan of Harrison Reed. I can see him moving to a bigger club. I really like him. I think he's a really good footballer. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, Palace. I mean, I found it very frustrating, George, watching it, because I was like, as I said, tongue in cheek on Twitter. I don't know how you watch this every week, because God, it stressed me out, I think. But I mean, not even to create any chances. I mean, no shots on target. And I was like, you're playing against Fulham. You're not playing, you're not playing against a Man United or Arsenal or whatever. You're playing Fulham.
Arsenal.
You were kind of asking for that one, mate.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, touche.
Not Barcelona, Arsenal, yeah.
Yeah. I'll get there, somewhere. But you know what I mean? It's like, I'm watching, I'm thinking, are Palace even going to even attempt to get into Fulham? And, it's very frustrating.
Well, I think the James McCarthy substitute for, was it Eze, said everything you need to know about that game. We had no intention of winning that game whatsoever, because he knows he can't win a game without Will Zaha. So he's just buying time until Zaha gets back, and it'll be the same against Man United. Only it won't work because they have far more quality than Fulham do.
Yeah, that's very true. But yeah, no, very frustrating as a neutral watching Palace. I was like, playing at home. I know home advantage is kind of gone now because there's no fans, obviously, but still, you're playing a team in the bottom 3. You should be going for the jugular. You've got some decent players.
Oh, no, not even that. Just like, if you want to play counter-attack against Fulham, I completely understand. That's exactly how we beat them at their place. But like, you've actually got to try and get the ball forward. You know what I mean? And try and counter-attack. We didn't even do that. We just sort of gave it back to them and said, yeah, you know what? Go ahead. We just want a point anyways.
It was a bit that, and I think what Hutchinson said after the game was like, well, we kept a clean sheet. Yeah, you kept a clean sheet. We never shot on target either. You got
to be fair, clean sheets have been even when we defended, clean sheets have been bloody hard to come by nowadays. So I'm not surprised he was pleased about that, considering it's like our 4th one of the season. But yeah, I mean the Twitter thing you were talking about, I mean that was in reference to entertaining the neutrals. Yeah. Like I don't give. My only point was I don't give a shit what neutrals do.
I don't blame you at all.
Yeah. Yeah, but no, yeah, I mean, I'm not a neutral, and I can't say I was impressed with what I saw. But I mean, there's no point complaining about it because he's not going to be sacked, and I don't think he'll. The way everyone's been talking about him, I just can't see him lasting past the end of the season. So all we can really do is just wait until then.
I think so. It's coming on that. I think everyone's kind of resigned to that. I heard something, not even Crystal Palace related the other day, and it kind of got brought up, and they literally just said like, I think this is it at the end of the season. It's time to move on, really, because I hadn't really thought about it until you mentioned it. Then, like you were, half decent the first half of the season, and it's almost as if second half you've just gone right. That's it, we're safe. So whatever happens from this point on doesn't really matter. And
that's what he was brought in to do, was the thing. So you can't blame him entirely because that's what he's been told.
But the thing is, you look at some other sides, I'm not saying you'd be where West Ham are now, but potentially, they obviously started the season really well. And at quite an early point, they look pretty safe and they've kicked on from there. So, you've got to be left wondering, well, maybe we could have I'm not saying you'd be fourth right now because that might be too much because West Ham are probably a better side than you are. But
won't stop some fans looking at teams like West Ham and making us. I mean, my philosophy is we should be taking every game as it comes. Like when you're playing Fulham at home, it doesn't matter if you're 4th or 14th. Like they are there for the taking, and you know how to play against them. And that should be your focus, is beating Fulham and trying to get the 3 points. If we spend the whole season trying to win as many games as we can and see where we end up, then as long as we don't go down, as long as we're not scraping survival and we're relatively comfortable, then that's fine by me. But that's not what we're doing. Like you said, we're looking at the table and thinking, oh, that's it, we're fine now, and just sort of taking our foot off the gas. Like, why bother?
That's certainly how it seemed. And I think you finished above West Ham last season. I can stand corrected on that. But
not that far above, because we tanked at the end of the season. But we did,
you know, you've done it again last season, haven't you? You know, you've got safe essentially and then fell off a cliff. So it's a really strange passage. But just to touch on Fulham, I said before we started the call that bizarrely, even though, you know, they could end up going down and they are in the relegation zone. You know, out of the teams in the bottom half of the table, they're probably the best side. Like, they're a decent side, you know. They've got half decent defence, you know. I quite like them going forward. I like Luckman. I like Madger since he's come in. Loftus-Cheek's very good. I think they're a decent footy side, but, you know, at the end of the day, it might not count for anything because they might get relegated.
I think Fulham's biggest issue is they needed Mitrovic to step up more, because he, like, when we had him at Newcastle, like, I always thought, this guy, if he gets his head right, he could score loads and loads of goals. But it's not really happened for him. And, like, obviously he killed the Championship, scored so many goals. I think top goal scorer in the league and everything like that. But he's really flattered to deceive. And I think they've been a bit disappointed with. That's why they went and got Josh Madger, because they can't. I think Mitrovic has got like 2-3 goals this year. I mean, the guy cost 25 million, I think, we sold him to them for. So really should be doing better.
Yeah, okay, well, we'll move on. We'll move on to you then, Johnny. We mentioned Leicester Arsenal before. I was very impressed with Arsenal, I won't lie. I thought Leicester would win that game fairly comfortably, just how their form of the season's gone so far. But, I mean, it started that way, conceded very early on, but you did well to fight your way back into it, and a 3-1 win in the end. Yeah,
it was very good. I mean, apart from the Tielemans goal, which was dreadful defending, it reminded me of like playing FIFA on amateur. Like you just kind of walked through and then you got back into it. To be fair, a penalty that wasn't a penalty, just outside the box, and then David Luiz scored. I've been slagging him off for weeks. He finally scores a goal, and he played well. To be fair, David Luiz. Yeah, it was a good performance. I think Leicester, they've got a lot of injuries. I mean, no Maddison. I mean, that was a key thing for them. No Maddison, and obviously Harvey Barnes went off, which looked nasty as well. But yeah, I was quite impressed. I mean, I'm really impressed with Odegaard. He had some nice little touches. It was a big week last week for Arsenal, actually, because if we'd have lost against Leicester and lost against Benfica, I think the questions of Arteta would have been risen again. But we come through both of them somehow. Very, very stressful on Thursday, I'm not going to lie. But yeah, it's things are looking up at the moment. We're still not where we want to be, obviously. But yeah, beat Leicester away is it's a good result, that. I thought we played really well. We were 1-0 up. They kind of sat back and didn't really offer anything, really.
Yeah.
I mean, Jamie Vardy was very quiet. Yeah, they didn't offer an awful lot, to be honest, and it was a very comfortable win. And the words comfortable win and Arsenal don't often go together. It was a stress-free 75 minutes, because the first 15 wasn't great.
Yeah, I mean, as for Leicester, I mean, for me, it's very clear that their weakness this season has been their home record. They've lost to a lot of teams at home: Leeds, Fulham, Everton, a lot of teams like that. And you feel like, I don't know if I'd necessarily say they're faltering quite like they were last season, because they have been more consistent than they were last season. But with how tight that race for top four is, like, there's every chance they could slip out. And if they do slip out, like, that's got to be this has to be their next step up, in my opinion. Is they have to try and solidify their place in the top four. Now that they've shown that they can push there, they have to actually get it. And if they don't, then I don't necessarily think Rodgers should be sacked. I think that's a bit of a knee jerk, but I think their expectations are definitely being raised a lot.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think if they don't finish in the top four, they'll be disappointed. But they've got to hope that Harvey Barnes' injury isn't too bad, and hopefully Maddison's back soon, because I think they've got a very good squad. Leicester, their first 11 is a very, very good squad, but they haven't got a great bench. You can't replace a player like Maddison. As good as some of the players are, it's like that Shelby's okay, but he's not Maddison. Same as that. Like James Justin, I'm a big fan of him. He was injured, and they brought that. Who the player was? He got booked straight away, like in 10 minutes. And they got a very good squad, as I say. But I think for them to go to that next level, they do need to get a bigger in depth of team, I think.
interesting one, Leicester. So if they don't make top four this season, having, again, I'll stand correct on this, but they've been in the top four for a large period of this season. Having fell out like they did last year, you're right in terms of not sacking Rodgers because, Leicester aren't, historically a banker top four side, far from it. So, not getting top four isn't exactly a disaster, but in the positions they've been in 2 years running, to then not get it is pretty poor. And obviously they got knocked out the Europa League last week as well, so it was a pretty poor week as well. The only thing I'd say that could hurt Leicester potentially, if they don't make top four, because the signs are there that they might fall off a cliff again and they might not make it. Especially like George touched upon with teams hopefully such as Liverpool and Chelsea hitting form and potentially taking them out of there, is some of the players, the lads that are injured in particular, might warrant Champions League football at some point, like maybe next season. So there could be some teams sniffing around them, like Tielemans and Maddison and Barnes especially. I think Barnes is brilliant.
Yeah.
So they might have a problem there as opposed to sacking Rodgers. They might lose some players.
I think so. I think you're really right, actually. Yeah, I mean, Tielemans as well, like him. Let's say James Justin. I think if they don't get Champions League, I think he could go somewhere. They got a very good squad, well, first squad anyway. But I say bench isn't great. That's the problem for Leicester, I think.
I think Leicester have done overachieved so far. It's like, whilst we say they've spent money and stuff, they did sell Chilwell for 60 million, didn't they? So, and the season before they sold Maguire for 80 million. They're probably used to losing their best player now. So probably, I think when I watch Leicester, I realise now that probably James Maddison is their most important player, not Jamie Vardy.
Yeah.
So when James Maddison's not playing or not playing well, they don't work as well. It's not as fluid. And I think he is someone who probably, if say Leicester were to push, and were to fall out, I agree. For me, he would be the one to go for. I know a lot of people talk about Grealish, but I would say Maddison is not far behind Grealish. So, but I think he has overachieved with that squad to get them up. But because it's happened for the second year, is it Brendan Rodgers can't see it over the line like in 2013?
Don't say that.
I had to throw that in.
Oh, that's a yellow card.
You won the league now.
Brendan Rodgers can't see it over the line. That sentence should not have been allowed.
Oh, that's out of order, that. That's out of order.
Yep, okay. Well, that just leaves you then, Andrew. And, I mean, aside from Palace, they're probably the most uneventful of the bunch. Newcastle won, Wolves won. I mean, any insight?
At least we had goals.
Well, exactly, yeah. I mean, any insight from you that we can't really glean from the surface?
I actually think that Wolves team was not very good and they were there for the taking. We should really have won that game. Wolves, I mean, this season when I've watched them, I haven't been that impressed by them as a team. But, and I think with us, we basically were playing really well, and then Almiron and St Maxim got injured, and then we lost the momentum because they are hard. With Wilson, they're our best players. So now we're without all three of them till the end of April. Till April. So it's going to be difficult. Steve Bruce, there was this substitute confusion where supposedly Matt Ritchie didn't give instructions, and that led to players out of position, and that led to the goal, which again is just why are people talking about? Why has that come out? I mean, Steve Bruce just looks like a bit of an idiot at the moment. Everything he says just, he was laughing when he was leaving the pitch with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and then he said, well, the reason we were laughing was Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was telling me how well we played. I was like, no, he didn't. We didn't play that well. Just stop. Everything he's saying is becoming a bit like a comedy. He should really have been sacked. Mark Ashley has not learned anything from Steve McLaren that year in 2016 because it's exactly the same kind of poor tactics, dropping points here and there, not doing well, not getting the best out of the players. So, I think he's going to stay now. Mike actually literally don't think he cares at the moment. He's probably more worried about the high street if it's going to come back after COVID. So he's like, we just have to wait. And, I was really hoping Joe Linton would get injured, but unfortunately he's available. So, nothing we can do there. We just have to see. Hopefully Ryan Fraser can turn up and do something with these players out, but I really doubt it. But we're playing West Brom next. I mean, huge game against West Brom. So
home or away?
It's away.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think he'll play Joe Linton when really he should play Gale or Carroll. But all three of them are not really good enough for the Premier League. So gonna be very tight. But you never know. You gotta hope. But,
You
Right, so happy. Oh,
sound so forlorn there.
I just don't trust you, Ruth. I can't believe he's the things he was saying when we were 12th, 13th. So he's still saying the same thing when everybody could see we were going downwards, except for Chris Sutton, Robbie Savage, all these pundits who never watched Newcastle and say, oh yeah, he's a great manager. Look what he's done. He's done terrible at Villa, done terrible at Sunderland. Yeah, he's a great manager. I just think he's completely out of his depth and he's just waiting to be sacked. But we know they won't sack him. And Mike Ashley will have a third relegation on his CV. He won't care.
I think Newcastle are in all kinds of trouble, to be honest. With these injuries they've picked up today, I think it's been confirmed today. That's their three best players out. And let's be brutally honest, they're decent players. I quite like Sam Maximin, and I quite like Almiron as well, actually. And Callum Wilson scores goals. I'm not his biggest fan. I don't think he's a fantastic footballer, but he does score goals. So, that team without them three is a relegation team. If you hadn't had them three all season, you're probably bottom of the league.
Well, we haven't had Sam Maxim for most of the season.
Yeah, but that hurt you, didn't it, at the time? That's what dragged you into this. With Fulham, like I told you, with Fulham playing quite well all of a sudden, and not necessarily picking up the points that they should, but looking a lot better. I really fear for Newcastle.
Well, they are picking up points as well, though. I mean, they won at Everton. They beat who was it at home? I forget, but they are stringing results together.
A little bit, but I think the last two results have been draws in games they probably could have won.
Yeah,
that's what I was. But you're right in terms of the Everton result. I thought they were brilliant that night. I really did. And like I said, I think they drew with Sheffield United. Obviously, the draw with Palace. They probably, in hindsight, could have gone and won them games. So, but yeah, in terms of Newcastle, God, I don't see where the next result's coming from. And I actually, just to touch on something Andrew said, I thought they were okay against Man United. I thought they probably deserved something from the game.
No.
I wasn't on. I haven't been on since, but that Swan Lake dive for Marcus Rashford was something, wasn't it?
I've got to say, for me, St Maxim should be playing for a top 6 team. He's too good for Newcastle. He goes past people like they're not there. He's injury prone and he had long COVID and stuff, but he should be playing for a top 6 team. He's only 24. If I was one of those, for me, he should be. Maybe there's an attitude problem there and stuff why maybe some of the top clubs haven't touched him. But for me, he's that good. If you could get you, he reminds me so much of Ben Arthur. He used to go past people no tomorrow and score great goals. And St Maxim should be playing much higher level. And I know he won't be there next season. He's too good to stay with us.
Yeah, the only thing is, is he on it all the time? Because I've seen him be brilliant, but I just think, well, you're obviously better than these people. But I don't know does he do it often? He should be. He reminds me of an Arsenal player, to be honest. He's got that sort of thing about him. But I just don't know. He mustn't do it week in, week out. That must be his problem.
I think for me, he was on it last year. He was brilliant last year. This year he's been injury interrupted. Every time he comes back, he plays 2 games and gets an injury. But he cuts in, goes past people. I know, and if he had better players supplying him, he would just kill it. He would. He's just. I think this year has just been injury prone. But yeah, I mean, for me, I can't believe we only got him for 20 million. Like when Joe Linson's 40 million, it's just.
That's not a good barrier for you, if anything.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
my barrier for everything at the moment. Joe Linson was 40 million.
Yeah, he should be playing at a top 6 club and he has so much natural talent. Why does that sound familiar?
Well, Zaha did have his chance, but fucked it up.
David Moyes fucked him over, you mean? Anyways, as for Newcastle, yeah, I echo a lot of what Dan said. With the former teams at the bottom, with Newcastle, in 17th as well, hovering just above it, I really do fear for them. And one other team as well, I think are really getting sucked into that relegation fight, who I'm fearful for, is Southampton. I think that 9-0 since against Man United, they has really destroyed their season. I don't think they've won a game since. They've lost like 5 of the last 6 games or something ridiculous. To some teams around them as well, the likes of Newcastle. So, they're in real. It reminds me a bit of us in the season before Pardew was sacked, the season we got to the cup final, where we had that amazing start to the season. We were 5th at Christmas or something ridiculous like that. And then we literally won about 2 games for the rest of the season and sucked into a relegation battle and finished 15th. It reminds me a lot of that. So I'm not necessarily saying, from what I've seen from Southampton fans, it's the board they have a problem with more than Hassan Hüttl, because, he hasn't had that much backing and they've been able to push up at that upper echelon, however brief. But, they've probably got enough to stay up, but I don't think they're safe on their current points tally, so they need to get at least a couple more wins, in my opinion.
Yeah, there's a couple of teams. If you've got Southampton, Burnley, Brighton, they're all kind of there or thereabouts.
Burnley battered us. I'm not worried about them. Dyche always gets the results when he needs to, but Brighton and Southampton in particular, yeah.
No, unfortunately, because if it's always back to maybes. If Fulham would have beaten Palace on Sunday and beaten Sheffield United, then I think there are definitely Southampton, Burnley. Even there's some teams there that are really, if they don't back up their ideas, they're going to be sucked in. I think Newcastle at the moment they're sleepwalking down into a relegation battle. I think
with Burnley, they're making Gareth Bale look like the 2013 Gareth Bale. Then they really should be wary, because they were pretty awful against Spurs.
They were terrible. Let me say that. They were terrible.
They were, but that's the thing with Burnley. They have the odd couple of games where they don't do that well, and then they win about 3 or 4 in a row. So, particularly against the teams around them. Like I said, they destroyed us. They beat Villa. I think they beat Fulham as well. Yeah. So, I don't know. I get what you mean. There's definitely room for... There's no breathing room for them just yet, but... I back them to stay up personally.
Supposedly, Burnley's takeover is not as good. They don't actually have as much money as they said.
It's a bit like the Glazers, isn't it? They put them in like £80 million of debt or something like that.
It's funny, the Premier League approved that deal, but they don't.
Yeah, funny that.
The other deals. Really, really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Burnley working on Sunday because I was still celebrating Arsenal getting above Spurs for 12 and a half minutes. We're above them. 12 and a half minutes, and they scored in the first minute, didn't they?
Well, yeah. Why on earth were you getting carried away before that game even played? Like, you knew they were playing and were playing Burnley. Like, surely at least wait until the game's finished.
Pour me third cider, and then before I even finished pouring, they 1-0 up. I was like, that's great then, isn't it? Yeah, didn't last long. Never mind.
You play them in a couple of weeks anyway, so you'll get your chance. Presuming you don't lose again, but yeah, we'll move on because we've gone over the games a lot now. We'll move on to our discussion of the week. And it's fair to say all of us have been lamenting the punditry in Britain for a long time, particularly this weekend. You look at the Jamie Redknapp, Roy Keane argument. You look at all of the people on BT Sport. God, I can't remember most of their names. Robbie Savage and the like. The commentators on the Palace Fulham game I thought were pretty poor. And Johnny brought up the point where is there too much bias in favour of their own clubs? Because obviously all of them are ex-pros, all of them have their own teams. And we've made this conversation earlier in the season with people like Roy Keane, and Ian Wright, people like that. So Johnny, you brought it up. I'm interested to know what you think.
Don't get me wrong, I don't mind a little bit of bias. I don't mind that. Like Ian Wright's very biased about Arsenal, and he loves Palace as well. But then that's all well and good. And fans
he's a bit more on and off with Palace. Yeah.
As an Arsenal fan, I quite like it when he's passionate about Arsenal. But at the same time, when Arsenal play badly, he'll be the first to admit we play badly. But it's just because some pundits they're so. Like Roy Keane's a prime example. He doesn't like Liverpool. I think Liverpool could win 27-0 and he'd still find something to slag him off about. And same as Graham Souness, he doesn't like Man United, and that's. But I do think, for me on Sunday with Redknapp and Keane, it was just a bit cringy. It was two drunk blokes arguing in a pub. It was like you two are on TV, you're being paid. all right, fine. If that's your ex team or whatever, that's fine. But it's just a little bit childish, I think, some of it. And as to Redknapp against Burnley, I think every 10 minutes it was like, and we're going to go down to Jamie Redknapp. Why? I don't understand. Why are you talking him for? It's just very bizarre. Yeah, some of the punditry is just, it's not great, I must admit. Yeah.
I suppose the question to ask here really is, with the biases that we know are present, how much is too much? Like, what's the balance between actually being a pundit that gives you insight into the game and tells you what's going on, and actually having that little bit of football banter between teams and poking fun at each other for no reason?
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I think if Roy Keane was allowed, I think he'd have a T-shirt saying "I hate Liverpool" on it. I think if he could, I think he would.
Well, I think he'd have a lot worse than that, but
yeah, it is a fine line, and as I say, but I just think some of it, and Sunday was kind of I was like, Joe, I've had enough of this. I think I turned the sound down. So I think, Joe, what? I just found it a bit boring. And Roy Keane's comments about Liverpool against Sheffield United, I just found it very odd. Like saying about if they don't beat Sheffield United, they should all retire. It's like, what? What are you even talking about? And it's just some of the rubbish that he comes out with, and a lot of pundits do. But I'm sure Dan will have a lot to say about Roy Keane as well. But yeah, it's just something that's goes a little bit too far, I think. And at the end of the day, it's just their opinions. You know what I mean? And I think some of them think just because they're ex-players and for a certain team, they're right. And it's like, well, just because you're being paid for it doesn't mean your opinion's gospel. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one with the bias. We all know who these people are, so we expect a little bit of bias. I do think they go over the top sometimes. I will say, like, people probably call Jamie Carragher out for being biased, but there's a really interesting sort of, not agenda, but sort of, feeling amongst Liverpool fans that he's going against that, like, on purpose a lot recently. Calling Liverpool out for certain aspects of the game. Like, he said something the other day about Van Dijk, he's fed up of hearing about it, he's sick of hearing about it. But, when something explains, like, why we're so poor, then that's what it is. He's almost doing it on purpose to reverse that, if that makes sense. But as for Roy Keane, that's not what I want to watch. Like, if I wanted to watch fellas shouting at each other, and this is no dig at them, I'd watch Arsenal Fan TV. Like, I tune in. I want to hear, like, actual insight, not just people screaming at each other. Like, Roy Keane was just shouting the word Doherty at the top of his voice on Sky Sports. Like, what's that? That's not helpful for anyone. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just a little bit tired of him. I think, he got some early fame in terms of everyone liked him being a little bit prickly and a little bit, argumentative, but it's gone too far now. And with his haggard-looking beard, it's just got a little bit Father Ted, if I'm honest. In terms of just him just shouting at the top of his voice, whatever he feels like shouting at people, shouting people down. That's not punditry. That's just a man being quite aggressive to people, which isn't great. But
it's Jamie Redknapp, he deserves it.
Yeah. In fairness to Jamie Redknapp, he was trying to have like a bit of a conversation. He got a little bit prickly himself because he was being shouted at. But, it's all well and good having a debate, but, he just sat there just shouting at people. And I know Graham Souness had his moments in the past because he's quite an aggressive person as well, but I've not seen anything like that before, what I've seen the weekend. And I just think that was a bit of a tipping point for me. Like, we all tune in to Sky Sports and BT Sport because we want a bit more intellect. Whereas if you want, you're shouting and you're opinionated stuff, you can go and watch Fan TV because you get your bias there, I think that there's a fine line, and we seem to be crossing over now into, fan Sky Sports, if you like. And I'm not sure it's the way to go, to be honest.
Fans like Sky Sports, they should bring the fan zone back. Anyone else miss that?
How great was fan zone?
I am, believe it or not, I am old enough to remember fan zone, yeah.
I think Roy Keane's point about Spurs was true, though. He was just saying that basically, except Kane and Son, who else there in that team now is really that great?
Yeah, he lost all credibility, though, didn't he, because of the way he was putting it across?
He was putting it across, yeah. Because Jamie Redknapp just kept saying, oh, but they're internationals. I'm like, Martin Kelly is an international. Like, lots of people have represented their country. Like, it doesn't make you a great player. Like, for me, especially in the Premier League, where the majority of the players are internationals. So I can see what he was trying to say, but he didn't communicate it the best. For me, generally, I think with the pundits, like you said, they all have their own agendas and they basically want to say, and I think people expect a bit of bias with them. But I'll be honest, I think Carragher has been a bit refreshing in that he has criticised aspects of Liverpool, which is, and I think Gary Neville does the same with Man United.
I like Gary Neville.
Yeah. I think Shearer is so used to Newcastle being crap, so he's always criticising Newcastle. So, yeah, I think I've got to say I don't like Ian Wright as a pundit. Oh.
I really like Ian Wright. You know what I mean? Of course, I'm not saying I'm an Arsenal fan.
I wonder why.
I think Ian Wright, this is what happens. Pepe has a good game. Pepe is such a great player. Pepe is fantastic. Pepe is brilliant. Pepe has a bad game. Oh, he should never wear his shirt again. That's Ian Wright.
What are your thoughts on Alan Shearer, Andrew?
I think at the beginning when he started punditry, he was really bad, but he's improved. His knowledge has improved. He clearly knows a lot. At the end of the day, as well, like I said this, when Thierry Henry was the pundit, I can listen to Thierry Henry because when I was a kid, that's who I wanted. Like after Shearer, I wanted to play like Thierry Henry, so I'd always listen. And Alan Shearer is the Premier League top goal scorer. There's not much. I think listening to maybe someone like Jermaine Genius, like he's our Newcastle view. Like I find it hard to listen when I'm like, you hardly run around when you played for Newcastle, and he's like, oh, the players should care for the North. You didn't do that when you played for us. So yeah, I think for me, I watched quite a bit of beIN Sports, and when they had Jose Mourinho on, he was the best pundit.
Jose Mourinho was a great pundit.
They have Arsene Wenger quite a lot as well.
Arsene Wenger,
Arsene Wenger's
brilliant pundit. Though you are a bit like, maybe you should have concentrated on defence at Arsenal for the last 10 years. But yeah, anyway.
He talks really well. He talks really well.
Well.
Captain Hindsight, you could label him.
He didn't see it, though. He didn't see it. That's the problem.
Yeah.
I think, like, I am jealous in Italy. They have, like, Capello is like a pundit in Italy. Like, that is the type of caliber pundits you really want. It's such a shame Sir Alex Ferguson never wanted to do punditry, because it would be interesting to see what he thought as well.
And you know what? Like, listen, take nothing away from him as a manager. I just think the impression I got from him as a person, like, he obviously knows a lot about the game, but I get probably a milder version of Roy Keane vibes from that.
Yeah.
Like, I just think a little bit too shouty and a little bit too, like, my opinion's the only one that counts sort of thing. I'm not like, honestly don't think I've ever seen Roy Keane take anything on board.
No.
And that's a serious problem, because you see, like, you touch on Neville and Carragher, they'll have these Monday night debates and they'll disagree and they'll actually have conversations. That isn't possible with Roy Keane. You can't have a conversation with that, and that's a problem in my eyes.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when he kept shouting Doherty, I was like, what is he talking about?
What's that about, like?
Yeah, I know, it was funny. But yeah.
I don't think Mick and Richard's knowledge is that great, but his laugh and his energy is very good. I've got to say, it's easy to watch.
Yeah, but but like, you could put a Labrador on and you could get, you know what I mean? You could get energy from a Labrador, couldn't you? Like, I get where you're coming from, and I quite like Mick and Richards. I just think they're going down a dangerous line with this, and the point you make about other countries is a really good one, and other networks, because some of the punditry you see and you hear and you think, God, that's brilliant, like, you've really nailed down on something there, but it doesn't tend to come from Super Sunday. It comes from Italy or Germany or whatever, so it's a dangerous path we're leading down in this country, in my opinion.
To be honest, with ESPN, they have two, like, journalists who are pundits, Gab Marcotti and Julien Laurent. And they are brilliant. I could listen to them talk. They have such insight, and even tactically, they've started to learn about tactics so that you can give you information and so forth. And even though they've not played the game at a professional level, I do find them a lot better than a lot of the ex-pros. Like, I would much prefer to listen to them, their input.
Yeah, my personal favourite bit of punditry slash tactical analysis in history was, I think it was over in Sweden. I think it was a Palace Newcastle game a few years ago where the pundits analysed the stewards taking down a pitch invader at half time. Like they analysed, like they had him like the little arrows of the movement showing which way he was going and all that. Like, I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah, I think. I mean, who's your favourite pundit? I really like Alex Scott. I think she's superb. I
like Alex Scott.
Yeah,
I heard some people say that she doesn't give that much insight that you wouldn't get from just watching the game. Like, she kind of just states the obvious, which I'm not entirely sure I agree with. But I suppose that's another debate about how much specific insight do you want from pundits? Like, how much extra information do you want from them?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, Jermaine Genius. I do like him. He comes across as a really nice bloke, Jermaine Genius. But he does talk a lot of rubbish, I must admit. Maybe I'm saying he's ex-Spurs, maybe. But so was Hasselbank on Sunday. I don't know. I'm not a fan of him as a pundit, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, I do like Gary Neville. It pains me to say. It's between Neville and Carragher. I think what they do is quite a few levels above everyone else at the minute, to be honest.
They've got quite a good dynamic, haven't they, as well? Yeah. Yeah, okay. Well, we'll move on to the Let's All Laugh at. There's been quite a selection from this week, in my opinion, there has. Anyways, we'll start with you then, Dan, as the newcomer. Well, returning newcomer, I should say.
Yeah. Old ground. Lee Mason.
Yeah.
And right, there's two strings to this. So, I mean, there's the incident, isn't there? Let's be honest. Like, without wanting to go too deep into the officials conversation, because God knows we've all been there. But that incident is awful, isn't it? Like, it's embarrassing, it's terrible, it's the epitome of what's gone wrong this season in terms of, officiating. But the actual funny part, although it might not be that funny if it's true, but I'm going to say it, is he missed the next day having picked up an injury.
Yeah, I noticed that. It's very suspicious.
Yeah, he's picked up a calf injury during the game, despite finishing the game. And he's also not available this weekend because of the same calf injury. So, yeah, I think the incident and his, curious calf injury would go into the hat for me.
Yeah, sounds like a Coutinho back injury or an Ozil back injury. Ozil illness.
Yeah, very dodgy.
It was just awful. I mean, I was just blow your whistle and blow it again. It's like, what are you doing? And he lost it. I don't know what he was doing, Lee Mason.
He panicked, hasn't he? He just panicked. He's looked up, seen the keeper stood in his post, and thought, no, I've really messed up here. And he's tried to save the day by blowing the whistle again, and it's just escalated. And it's just, but you know what? I can't remember his name now. Wolves manager Nuno Espirito Santo. He got fined £25,000 for saying Lee Mason wasn't good enough to ref in the Premier League. I really hope he's kept the receipt, because I'd be putting it back into the FA and claiming that money back.
Yeah,
because absolutely. He was right, wasn't he? Like, he's not good enough,
Bang on, it's awful. I mean, not for George so much. He's he happened to Brighton.
Well, I mean, I thought that he blew the whistle twice because he'd sort of seen something in the build-up and was stopping it. Like, I don't know. Like, I genuinely didn't have a clue what the hell was going on. Like, I don't think anyone did at the time, apart from the referee. I mean, you can even argue if he didn't. But I mean, that's not the sort of standard officiating I want to see. Like, I mean, to be fair, Brighton also did miss 2 penalties in the same game, so you can't say that they deserve to win. But equally, like, you don't want to see results like that happening because of refereeing decisions, because it can affect teams' whole seasons. Like, what if, well, it was Brighton then, but what if it's Palace the next week? Like, you know what I mean? I don't want anything that can hurt us to hurt them, like, because then that's just not fair game.
We're reaching a serious climax, in terms of referees in this country, in my opinion. Like, it's getting talked about time and time again, and VAR just highlighting it. Like, I don't know. I've thought about this before. Could we not get referees from different countries? We buy players from different countries. Yeah. So can't you just pick the best referees from over Europe, like, and just get them in?
It's arrogance, isn't it? It's arrogance. Like, we were fuming about not having a referee at the World Cup, or whatever it was. It's pretty obvious to see why now, looking at it. I mean, it's yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, they're nice as well. I mean, I think I saw it on Twitter as well. I think it was an Australian game at the weekend. Yeah. There was an offside or something like that, and you could hear what the referee saying in the VAR. It was very clear. I started why we can't have it over here. If we can actually hear what they're saying, it make sense. But it's just awful. We're just best league in the world, and we're just just
Because it'll be Lee Mason saying, I'm not quite sure of the rules here.
My calf's hurting now. I know that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what about you then, Andrew? What have you got?
Mine is the Zlatan Ibrahimovic comments where he basically said about LeBron James, who's like the most famous basketball player in the world, said, LeBron James should stick to talking about basketball and shouldn't really talk about politics or racism or whatever. And then LeBron James said, it's interesting because I did research about Zlatan Ibrahimovic and he talked about racism in Sweden in 2018. So why is he picking on me? And I know what I'm talking about. So it's just made Zlatan look really hypocritical. And,
it's not a good look for him at all, is it?
No.
Especially LeBron James of all people. Like,
just like, fact about LeBron James, he has a small percentage ownership in Liverpool.
He does.
Did you know that, Dan?
Yeah, he does. Kylian Mbappe 2021, remember it.
Yeah. He bought. I think he got them with one of his deals, some shares with FSG, and
that makes sense.
Obviously, it was pre-Liverpool winning the league and the Champions League, so I'm sure his shares gone, like his percentage. He must have made quite a bit of money now, so it's good investment.
That is where a lot of the Mbappe rumours come from, to be honest with you, because them two are really close and they've got all sorts of endorsements together. So a lot of the Mbappe talk comes from the LeBron James link. So, you never know. You never know.
The other story I had, I don't know if you saw this story, that basically when Erling Haaland was moving to RB Salzburg from Molde, he basically, Man U were interested in buying him at the time. And the agent said, is the meeting in Norwegian time or British time? And he wrote down the wrong time. So he missed the meeting. The Man U delegates missed the meeting with the agent, and he signed for RB Salzburg later that day because they missed. So can you imagine? They would have gotten for £3 million at the time.
That's peak Man United, isn't it? Really, it's like who's the player that went to Brighton? I forget his name, but like the Colombian wonder kid, like the best player in whole South America apparently.
Casido,
that's him. Yeah, United were portly in for him about 6-7 million or whatever it was. Brighton paid for him, and they just didn't buy it. They just didn't pay it for whatever reason. Like, I mean, imagine he goes on and smashes it for them, and I mean, who knows? There's a lot of young Brighton players that have come through and not featured that much, so you never know. But I mean, there's every chance he might as well. So I mean, that seems to be a habit with United lately.
Yeah, but Erling Haaland, I mean, whoever gets him instantly is going to become I think would have a very good chance at title challenges.
Yeah. Haaland 2021 Liverpool, remember that.
I think
slip both future Ballon d'Or winners in there.
I think he's nailed on for City. I think he's the Aguero replacement. It's a bit worrying because City at the moment are doing so well without a striker. Can you imagine them with the most potent striker, probably with Lewandowski in the world? It's just...
Yeah. Okay. Well, moving on to you, Johnny. What have you gone for?
For me, that hasn't been an awful lot, but for Sunday, there was one that made me laugh, no chuckle, was Solskjaer's comments about VAR and stuff, and they don't get penalties. Last season, you've had more penalties since the start of last season than anybody else in Europe, and it was just some of his comments and on the Chelsea website or something like that, wherever it was. It was just a little bit hypocritical, and it was just I mean, I think it was a penalty. If it was against Arsenal, I'd be going, that's a penalty. But and if the referee said I can't give that because it's too controversial, that's funny. If he said that is funny.
They've backtracked on that, haven't they now?
Yeah. Yeah, and another thing that made me laugh is of course Neymar. He's going to miss another game because it's his sister's birthday. 10 in a row. It's unbelievable that. I can keep getting away with that.
He should just have it in his contract.
It's got to be in his contract. It's got to be.
He needs to stop getting suspended and pretending he's injured. Just say, look, I need this time to spend with my sister, please.
Nobody will convince me that's not written into his contract. It's too weird. There's no way.
Yeah,
there's no way.
Yeah, this is I think it's a 10th year in a row or something. I'm maybe not 10th. It's like that though. Every year. But yeah, I'm not about on the 13th of March. Oh, what was that? I've got a party. Sorry. What are you talking about? Yeah.
Did you see what Neymar said? He said basically he never wanted to play in the Premier League because it's too physical. I was just like, why? You're a man. Why would you say that? Like,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, does anyone else find it kind of ironic that Neymar, of all people, is saying that it's too physical in the Premier League? I mean, I think we know what he really means, but...
Well, for him, though, it would be, wouldn't it? You know, he doesn't like that, does he? He doesn't like any of that. He'll be down every...
Well, that's exactly it. Yeah, that's exactly my point.
He'd be down literally every 10 seconds, wouldn't he? And it is quite a physical league. I think Timo Werner said something similar, hasn't he? You know, with his struggles. But Neymar, Jesus Christ, he'd never be up, would he? He'd be really bad. But as for Solskjaer, just to touch on Johnny's, like, I found that really cringy and a little bit weird, the way he was talking, like laughing and like almost trying to make out he was joking, but being a bit psychotic. It freaked me out a little bit, to be honest with you. But I mean, to suggest that United have been hard done by penalties is something else. Yeah. And also, I just want to very quickly say, do you think that was a penalty, Johnny? Yeah.
I'll tell you, it's one of those things, right? If it was against Arsenal and Arsenal could have had a penalty, I'd go, it's a penalty. If it's against Arsenal and if it was Gabriel handballing it, I'd say no. So it's one of them. I think it could have been. It's one of them.
By the laws of the game and what we've seen this season, it probably is. But I will say, if football's giving them as penalties, like, we're in trouble. Because they're both going away from the goal, you know, it's on the edge of the 18-yard box. Nobody's scoring in that situation. Like, to give someone a free shot from 12 yards for that, it just seems a little bit too far for me.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, it's one of them. It's, as I say, if it was for Arsenal to get a penalty, I'd be like, that's a penalty every day of the week. If it's against Arsenal, not a chance. So it's one of them. I don't know. It was a pretty poor game, to be fair.
Yep.
Talking about like an emotional footballer reaction, I think Gabriel Paulista, you know, the one who used to play for Arsenal.
Oh, that's great.
Valencia. Yeah, the interviewer said, you know, at the moment you're closer to relegation than the Champions League spot. And he just burst out crying. Like, I just found that very emotional. Like,
well, I'll say another one to come to mind. It was Thursday night, Arsenal versus Benfica. One of the Benfica players, he died in front of Kieran Tierney, and Kieran Tierney said a few expletives to him. I don't know if you've seen it on Twitter. It's quite funny. I won't repeat it, but yeah, it's quite funny. Although Kieran Tierney did go down very pathetically on Sunday. I mean, it was pathetic, and I think, come on, Kieran, you made a granite. You know, come on, that was pathetic.
Everybody dies. All the players, even the English, Scottish, French, whoever, they all die. We need to like this. I think the stereotype that like, English players don't dive, and you know it's all foreign. It's not true.
It's really only the pundits that believe that. Let's be honest. Like most of the fans have no.
Rooney dived, Gerrard dived, all of them have dived.
Harry Kane doesn't dive. He's very clever.
Yeah.
It's getting worse, though, isn't it? It's getting much worse, in my opinion. Like, and the problem is, go back to it again, is refs keep giving it. So until they stop giving it, it's going to carry on, isn't it? It's one of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well.
Go on.
Yeah, doing my job for me. Well, my lots to laugh at is actually, it's not technically one from this week. I mean, it is a clip that's circulated this week, but it's supposedly from a little while back. I don't know if you've seen this one, Dan. It involves the Liverpool-Brighton game a few weeks back. There's a guy watching it with a Liverpool shirt on in front of the TV, and as soon as Brighton scores their goal, he takes his shirt off, and he's got a Brighton shirt on underneath. And I'm not sure if it was a Brighton fan or a Liverpool fan or just a random bloke taking the piss, but I just thought that was both extremely funny and extremely cringy.
I haven't seen that, no.
It's probably Robbie Keane, because every club he joined in his career, his boyhood club. Liverpool,
he did look a little bit like him,
club, Celtic, Spurs, West Ham.
Aston Villa, wasn't it? Yeah, Villa?
Yeah, Villa.
He did Villa, yeah. He went to LA Galaxy as well, didn't he, Robbie Keane?
Inter Milan, can you go there as well?
I tell you what, he had a good career, didn't he?
Yeah, more clubs than bloody Tiger Woods. Yeah.
It's like, was it? I remember Sergei Rebrov signed for West Ham in the Championship, like Ukrainian striker, and he said that when he was little in Kiev, that he used to follow West Ham's results. I was like,
everyone says that. It's like, it's my dream to play for whoever. It's like, no, it wasn't. Like, shut up.
You just reminded me of like my favourite Let's All Laugh At, and I completely forgot because it only happened a couple of hours ago. Dominic Calvert-Lewin today has said he wants to get Everton to the Champions League because that's where they belong. They've played 4 Champions League games in their entire history, and they're all in the qualifying stages, and that's where they belong. I mean, like if that was an Arsenal player, like so obviously big up Arsenal, you'd understand because they've had a lot of history. But Everton, is he all right?
Everton were very unlucky with the whole European ban, weren't they, at the time?
Well, they weren't that great in the 80s. People tend to overhype that.
Yeah, because they won 1 league title, didn't they?
Yeah, they weren't smashing it they were all right, but they finished like 10th a lot as well.
Yeah.
Love that, where they belong. It was like a
They
third.
belong.
It was like a third flag, and they'll win trophies. All right.
Well, we've got a lot to choose from then, and a couple of late entries as well. So, what do you guys want to go for? Don't all rush at once.
Sorry, yeah, there's a lot to choose from there.
Yeah.
I did like Zlatan. I do like Zlatan.
Yeah.
Yeah, I must admit, because the hypocrisy is outrageous.
I've got one extra one. I don't know if you guys have seen Michael Owen's Denim collection that he's.
Come again?
Michael Owen's done some denim clothes modelling, and he just looks ridiculous.
But I did see him fall off a bike the other day. That's pretty good to you. He fell off his bike by his drive.
I think that one's got a win just for the headline alone, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think Michael Owen's Denim collection.
Go on Twitter and find that now.
That goes in room 101.
Michael Owen's Denim collection, like it.
Oh, brilliant.
Tell you what, I bet it's bland.
Oh yeah.
Brilliant.
Something about, I don't know. There's a joke about not finishing or not being loyal in there somewhere, but I'm not smart enough to find it.
It keeps tearing. The hamstrings keep tearing.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
He's ripping at the back.